Hello again. This is only going to be a short film today because well, I've got various books to complete and I usually write 2 or 3 books at a time and I've got a few deadlines. I just want to talk a little bit about one of the great hoaxes of recent years that some people might not know about. In 2013, a film called 12 Years a Slave was released and it got tremendous reviews. It won 3 Oscars, including that for Best Picture. It's supposedly based on a true story of a black man who was a slave in one of the southern states of America before the American Civil War. And those seeing the film are often given the impression that it's somehow an authentic story, that it's actually the first person account of a slave called Solomon Northup. Here's a picture of Solomon Northup. Of course, it's a lot of nonsense. The book on which the film was based had been written by a black slave at all. It was actually written by a white man called David Wilson. He's the real author of 12 Years a Slave, and you can see him here. The amusing thing about 12 Years a Slave is this. We all know that films like Gone with the Wind and books like Uncle Tom's Cabin show us nothing more than white people's ideas about America and southern states in the years before and during the American Civil War. The attraction of 12 Years a Slave was it apparently was the reminiscences of a black person, a black slave at that time, and showed what people really felt, the real experience of slavery. What really happened was this. A man called David Wilson, who was an unsuccessful lawyer, wanted to be a novelist, but he didn't have much luck at that either. He heard about Solomon Northup and decided that he would approach him and see if he could get to ghostwrite his autobiography and then pass it off as Solomon Northup's own work, as his own story. The book's freely available. I don't know if any of you know about Project Gutenberg, which is a series of out-of-print books and out-of-copyright books that can be freely accessed. If you go onto the internet and Google 12 Years a Slave and Project Gutenberg, you can find a free online version of the book. And as soon as you start reading it, you can see at once it wasn't written by a black person at all. I don't know whether anybody can imagine a black person saying this. Here's a quotation from the book in which Solomon Northup supposedly is describing another black person. He says that he's a shrewd, cunning Negro, more intelligent than the generality of his race. I mean, let's face it, only a white person would write like that. More intelligent than the generality of his race is a way of saying that black people are stupid. Yeah. So no black person would ever use expressions like that. The idea that a black man wrote a single word of that book is quite false. By the by, most people have heard of the book Don Quixote by the Spanish author Cervantes. It's sometimes said that it's the first novel ever published in the world. Here's a picture of the cover of Don Quixote just to remind people about the book. Few people know that Cervantes was himself a slave in Africa for 5 years before his family managed to buy him back. I can't help wondering if anybody's going to make a film about Cervantes' life called 5 Years a Slave. It wouldn't really tap into the same zeitgeist as a film featuring a black slave. I mean, the idea of a white European being held as a slave for years just sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm sorry this is so short. I'm going to be doing a longer video next week, which will be asking the question, just how bad was the transatlantic slave trade? Okay, until then, cheerio.